Hello everyone, my name is Blue1442. This is technically part 2 of a 3-part series where I review all 3 Metroid Prime games from the lens of someone who really doesn't like the genre. For those who forgot or just didn't watch my first video, I have 3 reasons why I really don't like Metroidvanias. Number 1, the narrative is pretty vague initially. There isn't really enough of a story beat for me to get truly invested in what I'm doing. Number 2, the worlds are so big that backtracking becomes a necessity and it really starts to annoy me. And number 3, there's very little handholding in these types of games, usually to the point where I'm not sure if I'm even progressing in the game and I'm just feeling lost more of the time. At the end of the video, I'm going to give Prime 2 2 different scores, one based on my enjoyment of the game and one about how I feel about the game itself. Prime 1 really didn't fix much of the issues I had with Metroidvanias, so I'm really hoping that Prime 2 Echoes will fix it. Like last time, I'll be using the Dolphin emulator to play Prime 2, and instead of playing the actual GameCube version of the game, I decided to switch to the Metroid Prime trilogy. Mostly because now I can change the controls a bit to my liking. Now the left stick moves Samus in a direction and the right stick controls the cursor, like a usual first-person shooter. You know, the way God intended. Like the first game, the intro consists of a short text telling Samus that we lost contact with a Federation scout party, and they want her to figure out where they are. Honestly, this is such a much better hook than the frigate in Prime 1. This is a lot more concise and gives much more context to what you are doing. This still doesn't fix the narrative issue, but I'll get to that. Once we land and get out of her ship, I tested out the new movement. The twin stick controls now make walking through the game so much easier. My brain doesn't have to do these weird ass calculations to turn left or right anymore. What was hard to get used to was that the map button and now the morph ball button switched. So sometimes when I wanted to open up the map, I would instead turn to a morph ball. This wasn't the fault of the game and more of just changing platforms. But unfortunately, the issue of aiming up and down being so goddamn slow still persists. Exploring this mini cave system a bit more, we do find the missing Federation troopers. At least their bodies. They're scattered throughout this entire area. Now the question isn't where, but what and how. After turning on the power through the use of bombs, something seems to take possession of all the troopers, and Samus now has to fight her former allies to get out of here. Like I said in the first Metroid Prime video, I really enjoy how Metroid games incorporate horror into their games. I mean, just look at how they move. It's just so creepy looking. But then we find a new character, Dark Samus. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention something. In Prime 1, when we defeated the Prime Essence, it stole the Phazon suit from us and formed a new body, with Samus being its new form. You only get this last cutscene if you get like a 90% completion on the game, but I couldn't bring myself to play any more of it once I beat it. But then, Dark Samus breaks this crystal, which allows these little creatures to grab a hold of her and steal all of her upgrades. This was actually kind of a unique way to spin the, oh, Samus lost all of her upgrades type of thing, instead of, getting hit really hard into a wall. Now, Samus only has the Morph Ball and the basic Power Beam, and all she can do now is move forward. So far, I like this start better than in Prime 1. Yeah, it had the escape sequence and all that, but now it's presenting me with a lot of questions, and I actually want to figure out what is going on in this world. And there's still more later. We arrive to the Temple Grounds, a small area that seems to wrap around this large structure in the middle. Now, I've only been playing this game for like 30 minutes, but there is something I really need to say. I've scanned more in this short period than the entire Prime 1 game. And this hasn't been like scanning logs and bodies to see what is going on with them. It's more just like every time you pass through a door, you need to scan something. See a locked door, scan it. Elevator, scan it. It's just constant. And this does not let up for the rest of the game. Now, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, so I'm just going to call it a thing, just something neutral. But scanning further into the temple grounds, we actually find the Federation ship, and we figure out why they landed onto this planet. They were chasing a space pirate vessel onto this planet, which we now know as Aether. The ship was damaged upon re-entry, and their comm systems were also damaged. They were doing fine until those same creatures that attacked Samus come swinging by and decide to fuck shit up. Again, this is such a better understanding of why I should care. I want to figure out why this is all happening. And also, I just love this little scene here. After getting the missiles early into the game, I finally have the means to reach the big structure in the middle of the temple grounds. And here I'm greeted with an actual NPC with dialogue. He introduces himself as Umos and tells Samus what is happening. Aether, after being hit with some cosmic force, split into two versions of itself, one light and one dark. The creatures we have been seeing are called Ing and have been at war with these people for many years. The Ing have taken the energy from the white world and thus is on the verge of collapsing. Umos tells us that we have to help, because once the Ing are done with Aether, they will then head onto the stars and do the same thing to other planets. Boom! There you go. You have given me context to the world and a reason for why I should be caring about what I'm doing. It's bare bones, yeah, but it's enough for me to understand the gravity of this conflict. Yes, you can still scan logs, but instead of it being a necessity like in Prime 1, it just adds more flavor onto the world itself. Prime 2 has actually addressed the first reason why I don't like the genre, so we can just check it right off. Umos continues to explain that in order to save Light Aether, we have to find the power the Ing stole in 3 different temples, or worlds in this case, and bring them back to where they belong. The world in this game is structured a lot differently compared to Prime 1. The temple grounds acts as a hub to the other 3 worlds, Aegon Wastes, Torvus Bog, and Sanctuary Fortress. Currently, you can only go to each of these 3 areas through the temple grounds, but as you progress into the game, you can actually find elevators in these areas that'll bring you to the others, thus connecting the whole world together. But you only unlock Torvus Bog by completing Aegon Wastes, and Sanctuary Fortress by finishing Torvus Bog. Personally, I do like this style of world/level design a lot more than in Prime 1. Because you're only in one world or temple at a time, you don't really get lost as much. You know that whatever you really need will actually be in the section you're in, rather than leaving and going back. I'll explain more, but first, let's enter Aegon Wastes. After getting the ability to open up purple doors from Umos, we can now enter the elevator into Aegon Wastes. It's a pretty barren looking place and really lives up to the name Wastes. Some technology is scattered throughout the place and looks clearly rusted. This place was used for something, but I did not find the logs to explain. It also looks like the space pirates are here on Aether too. We find an inactive portal room, and in order to activate it, we need to find the bomb power-up. Exploring further into Aegon, we fight a small mini-boss, and defeating it grants us our bombs back. This is something kind of new to Echoes. Instead of finding items by themselves throughout the game, there are a lot more mini-bosses we can defeat to get our items back. Remember this scene in the beginning of the game? This makes finding new upgrades feel a lot more rewarding. You're both fighting back the Ing threat while also getting something in return. It also felt like there were more boss battles than there were in Prime 1. But after looking this up, Echoes only has 3 more, which is just strange. But it's clear that Retro Studios wanted to make these bosses feel a lot more important. So why do all the boss fights fucking suck in this game? Almost every boss fight in this game was so unfun that it became laughable. Each boss can either be described in like 2 ways: boring or unfair. Most of them are just boring. It's the same mechanic for the entire fight, you know. Dodge, hit the tail. Dodge, hit the tail. Dodge, hit the tail. For like 5 straight minutes. The worst bosses were just plain unfair. The way I'm defining the bosses are ones that are just confusing to understand, and when you think you're doing it right, you're not. And I will get to these 2 bitches later. Anyway, after getting the bomb power up, we head back to the portal room. Getting the bomb allows us to complete a puzzle to finally turn it on. After doing our 100th scan, we can enter it and land into the Dark World, Echoes' main new gameplay mechanic. The entire playworld is divided into 2 sections, the Light World and the Dark World. The Light World is easy to traverse and is safe, for the most part. The Dark World is filled with this deadly miasma that very quickly eats away at Samus' health. But it's filled with these little safe zones that block the damage and slowly refill your health. And when I mean slowly, I mean slowly. A friend described that he went to go grab some lunch while Samus was regaling her health. Like, it was that slow. Sometimes you have to shoot the zones as well to activate them, putting them on a timer. You can reshoot them to refresh the timer. All the enemies in the Dark World are also ing infested, and it's really cool to see how they were corrupted, both visually and the damage they deal. Because of the whole split world mechanic, the game itself is actually not that big. And to further go along with that, because it's a lot smaller, for the entirety of Aegon Wastes, I legitimately did not get lost. It was easy to see where I have gone and where I haven't because the world is now so condensed. Like I said before, the game is a lot more linear now, so what I need to find will have to be in this world somewhere. It was honestly easy to find where I needed to go. Something else that's cool is that when you do some things in the Dark World, they have the same effect in the Light World. But that's about it. You would think there would be like this cool puzzle where you have to go back and forth to solve, but all it really amounts to is, wow, door is now open. I guess it's good there's no puzzle that goes back and forth because Jesus Christ, the animation for going through the portal takes so goddamn long. It's fine the first time, but later on during something, it becomes such a drag. We get the jump boots upgrade and we come across a shut door. Scanning it reveals that we need to find 3 keys in the Dark World to open it up. This area is the boss room, and now we go on a mini scavenger hunt. I've seen a lot of people who reviewed Prime 2 describe it as similar to a Zelda dungeon, and I would have to agree. Find an item, which then unlocks the area to find a key. I enjoyed this. Each area has a mini goal. You don't have to go back to each world unless you want to 100% the game. Yeah, I'll get back to you on that. Back into the Light World with our new power-up. We go deeper into Aegon Wastes, and surprise! There's a space pirate base here. We infiltrate it and see that the pirates are also interested in the Dark World. But we can't seem to enter this portal as it's inactive. We have to find a way to activate it. And oh boy, Dark Samus is here too? And Metroids? Something clearly is going on here. Even more scanning later, we are now in the same room as Dark Samus, and finally starts the first boss fight against her. While I did mention that most fights in this game were bad, this one was just okay. Nothing really special, just hit her and dodge her shots. The music was lit though. Defeating her allows us to get a new power-up in our final new mechanic in Prime 2. The Dark and later, the Light Beam. Each of these allow us to now power up these crystals with the energy to open up doors, as well as dark and light doors. There is one more thing attached to them. I just realized that this gun is ammo. I've just been shooting it willy-nilly. Yeah, now non-power beam beams have an ammo capacity attached to them. You can either find ammo by either A, finding an ammo station that refills it up, or B, shooting enemies. If you defeat an enemy with, let's say, the dark beam, then light ammo will drop, and vice versa. I found that mechanic of swapping was kinda neat. Further into that, the dark beam does more damage in the light world, and the light beam does more damage in the dark world. Right now, you start out with only able to hold 50 bullets of each type, but you can find upgrades that increases your carrying capacity. Now, ammo is considered to be probably the most controversial new addition to the game, but honestly, I thought it was fine. Even when it was low, it was not that hard to find more ammo. Just kill enemies or just go back and forth, just grinding for it. Going back to items a bit, the same issue I had with Prime 1 again still exists in Echoes, where a lot of the upgrades in the game sort of have this journey that outweigh the cost. Albeit it was a lot less now because of the introduction of the ammo capacity upgrades. One last thing about the beams is that now we can shoot a lone portal with their beam color and it will activate, allowing us to enter in. With these 2 beams, the entirety of Aegon Wastes is now open, and I wasted no time in finding the final 2 keys to open the boss room door. But now we fight the world boss. It's a 3-headed worm, and it sucks to fight. The mechanics itself are nothing to write home about, but scanning it reveals a major problem that I had with the game. And that's this right here. The word concussive. You see, when I read that, my immediate thought was that, oh, missiles, right. Because a lot of science fiction, there's a thing called concussive missiles. For 5 minutes of me trying it out and dealing no damage, I gave up and looked up the fight. And you have to turn into a morph ball, get sucked in, and press A. Yes, I should have understood that when the worm was sucking like the air up, that turning the morph would probably make the most sense. But what I don't get is why is this called concussive damage? It just doesn't make sense to me. And many enemies in this game still use that same terminology of concussive versus explosive. Seriously, why is this called concussive and not explosive when it's literally called a bomb? My goodness, let's just continue. I kill the worms to get a new power-up. The Dark Suit, and oh boy, what is this? I mean, the color is fine, but what the hell are these World of Warcraft looking shoulder pads? It's like Nintendo decided to put 2 Michelin tires on Samus' shoulders. In terms of functionality, the Dark Suit mitigates a lot more damage from the Dark World, allowing us to venture further in without needing to stay in the Light Zone for 20 minutes. We get to the Dark Temple Heart, grab the Stolen Light, and make our way back to the Light Temple Heart to return it. Heading back to Umos, he congratulates us and tells us to head into the second world of the game, Torvus Bog. Now, this is where the game decided to take a big crap on me. Aegon Waste had a decent frame rate, besides this little issue here, but as soon as we enter Torvus Bog, we get into the single digits territory of FPS. No matter what I changed inside Dolphin, it would not get better. I wouldn't be able to progress like this, and kind of like in Prime 1, I almost gave up. But after doing some research, I found my solution. Introducing Prime Hack. Prime Hack is an edited version of the Dolphin emulator, but it's specifically made for the Prime trilogy. And it comes with so much quality of life things that I honestly should have started playing Prime 1 with this. It has performance adjustments, and the most important thing, the ability to use a mouse and the keyboard. It makes so much more sense than whatever this was, but now the frame rate is good and we can continue on into Torvus Bog. Torvus Bog, like the name suggests, is a water-filled area. You move a lot slower in the water and have a much less graceful jump height. The world is even divided into 2 sub-areas. The one we enter is the actual bog of Torvus, and later we get access to an elevator that brings us to a fully submerged, monster-filled lab. But the door further down is locked by a new type of door, so we have to find whatever we can to open this door. And this is where my second biggest issue of the game lies. You see, in Aegon Wastes, all the items you need to progress was already in Aegon Wastes. It was a self-contained area, so if you were missing something, you knew it was still in your area. Come Torvus Bog, and the third world we'll get to, there comes a point where you have to leave the area in order to progress, with no real indication that you have to. When I got the boost ball, I honestly didn't know where to go until the blessed hint system kicked in again. Yes, that still exists. It told me to leave Torvus Bog and re-enter the temple grounds. When we come back, we can see this half pipe here, and since I got the boost ball, I went on it and entered this tunnel. But before I could get far, I fell down some pitfall blocks I didn't see and thought nothing of it, and continued onward towards the area instead of trying again. Little did I know, this one mistake would cost me 45 minutes of my life. The door to the room underneath the temple is locked by the same door we saw in Torvus Bog. So I looked around a bit more, in the temple grounds, in Aegon Wastes. Hell, I even went back to Torvus Bog to see if I missed anything. I asked some friends who were in a Discord call with me to double check if the hint icon was even pointing to that bottom room and not the actual temple. Matt, do you think this is referring to the thing underneath it?
Oh, the question mark?
Yeah.
I want to say so.
I had to look up where the fuck to go, and the answer was actually boosting through these blocks I fell down, which then immediately went over the purple door to the bottom room. That's just so fucking dumb. Listen, if I fall through a tunnel while knowing where to go, my thought isn't, oh, let me try again. It's, well, let me go get the thing. And having the door to the place be locked by the item inside just made me go look for the thing in other areas, completely wasting my time. Even though getting the Seeker Missile was stupid, the upgrade itself is pretty cool. It uses missiles to lock onto 5 different targets, dealing damage at the same time. And with this, we can venture deeper into the Torvus lab. Moving through the water is still slow and floaty as ever, but we are able to find a jetpack that basically gives us a big boost in our jump, which then in turn leads to probably the most infuriating boss in the entire game, or at least tied with it, the Grapple Guardian. Now, let me tell you why this boss sucks. First thing, he has to try and hit you with this grapple shot. But first he needs to be in line of sight, and he moves slowly if you're in the light bubble. And when he does, you have to hit it with the light pillar so it's stuck. But I swear he only gets stuck like 20% of the time. Okay, let's say you get past that. Scanning the thing says you have to hit it in the back. You go behind him and shoot, but there is like just 3 pixels of his hitbox you can actually hit, and it just becomes straight luck to see if you can even hit it. Like, I'm not being dumb here either. You can clearly see that some of the bullets are dealing damage and some aren't. This bugged out fight should have not taken as long as it did. Now, time for an intermediary quiz. How long do you think it took for me to beat this boss? Was it A, 5 minutes, B, 7 minutes, C, 9 minutes, or D, 10 minutes? Alright, the correct answer was E, 17 minutes.
Plus, the actual area where you need to shoot
so much to...
He has so much health.
He's so incredibly
Excuse me?
small.
This boss took 10 minutes.
Alright, I've been saying a lot of stuff in a row about bad things and echoes, but I want to offset that by saying something good about it. Torvus Bog's world boss was actually really fun. This is Chica, or Chica? I don't know, it doesn't give a pronunciation. It's a worm that swims through this body of bad stuff. Some mechanics it does is swimming around, jumping over the platform you're on, and leaning on it, causing you to fall off if you don't deal enough damage to it. But killing the worm is just phase 1. There's an entire phase 2 to worry about. The platform breaks into 3 parts, and now you have to use the grapple hook to get behind its wings and use the secret missiles to clip all the wings off at the same time. There is even a little mini stage where Chica sucks up the dark liquid, and you have to switch beams in order to damage it. It was a fun boss, challenging, but completely understandable. Beating the boss gives us the Dark Visor, or basically a rebranded X-ray visor from Prime 1. We return the light, and now we go to the third world and final temple of the game, Sanctuary Fortress. Sanctuary Fortress is huge. Like, I swear it's bigger than Aegon Waste and Torvus Bog combined. Umos mentioned that the fortress is where the Luminoths, or yeah, their race is called Luminoths, first encountered the Ing and battled there, but lost. Sanctuary Fortress spots this more futuristic look, and all the enemies fit along with this theme. You go against robots, defense systems, whatever this thing is. It all just feels like everything makes sense. But then these Beyblade robots also have the whole concussive versus explosive thing, which again just doesn't make sense to me, so it took a lot more time to kill them than you should. Now when I say this place is big, I am not kidding. The size is comparative to the size of an area in Prime 1, and due to this, I actually got lost quite a bit, mostly because the rules of progression suddenly changed. There was both the normal kind of lost, where I was just trying to find what door I missed, but there was also a point in time where I was stuck on progressing. You see this little barrel thing laying around? Yeah, I thought that was just random debris on the ground and thought nothing of it while I walked past it several times. What do you know it, I would have to bomb these things to have a little thing pop up. This was another case of how was I supposed to know? Now the bad boss pattern doesn't stop in Sanctuary Fortress. It actually is the worst offender of it. When a lot of people talk about bad bosses in Metroid games, there is one that comes to mind whenever you talk about Prime 2. And that's the Spider Ball boss. You see, it's interesting at first. You have to bomb a certain area for the Ing thing to open up the next area by boost balling around like Samus is a pinball. But there are 3 phases of this, and it just gets progressively worse. The third phase is the reason why everyone hates this boss. So you have to hit all of these powder conduits within a short time. But this time you better not take too long, because if you do, it'll reset every one of them. And going up a level just takes so long, and getting to these 2 are a pain because of the slopes. For some reason, Samus would just not stay on the flat surface here, to the point that I thought this would be impossible with a mouse and keyboard. You know, considering that you can only do an absolute value of movement. But after beating the game, I looked up someone else's review, and even he mentions that getting Samus onto these platforms was stupidly annoying, and he was using a controller.
And suddenly, you're expected to be able to perfectly position a ball on top of a hill and wait for your bomb to explode to bounce you up into a switch. Then you finally get that, and then you do it again, then hop up to another switch before the Spider Guardian loops around and deactivates all that work and just...
The boss didn't take as long as the grapple hook boss, but it still left a bad taste in my mouth. Sanctuary Fortress still has the backtracking issue too, after you get the spider ball. You need to go back to Torvus Bog's underwater lab to get the power bomb. I also have some words to say about this boss, but if I talk any more about how I hate most of these bosses, this review would be an hour long. Heading back, I completely missed an easy shortcut back to where I left off, and I'm unsure to either categorize this as me being stupid or the game not hinting at it being a shortcut, so I'm just going to cut it out of my memory. The power bomb is what can explode that background-looking debris, which leads into the second encounter with Dark Samus. This was a good and fun fight. 2 phases and this cool pinball dodgy thing. Skipping around, we find an upgrade that was absent in Prime 1, but it's been here throughout the entire series. The screw attack. With this, we can now infinitely jump across the largest chasm. The only gripe I have with it was the learning process was kinda jank. The game says to repeatedly press the button to use it, but it fails to say that you have to press it to a rhythm. So I fumbled around with it until it finally worked. And when it did, it feels so good to use. A completely new upgrade to the game is something called the Sonic Visor. It's the third and final visor Samus can acquire. Putting it on allows her to view her surrounding area and see which objects are using sounds to lock a door or use it to solve a puzzle. The puzzles are actually quite cool. Shooting the lock plays a short melody of notes, and you have to shoot these nozzles in the same order to open the door. But there's a glaring issue when it comes to it just being a door opener. With it on, you can clearly see what's causing the sound, but when it's off, you can make a guess to what's locking the door by the sound it's making. But unless you have the Sonic Visor, you cannot interact with these things. It seems like a design oversight where you can clearly see the solution, but the things are indestructible until you can see it in black and white. The world boss is this giant mech. It has 3 phases, and I thought it was okay. Again, it comes back to this whole concussive versus explosive thing, and sometimes I swear I'm hitting its kneecaps with the rocket, but it doesn't deal any damage. Beating this boss gives us our final beam weapon, the Annihilator Beam. It deals massive damage, but uses both light and dark ammo. It also opens up the spirally looking doors for better shortcuts, and helps with the Sonic Visor puzzles. Returning to Umos, he says thanks, but there's one more temple we have to take care of. And that's the Sky Temple, the Dark World version of where we're standing. But instead of requiring 3 keys, we need 9, and they are spread around the entire world. Yes, Prime 2 starts to make the key hunt a tradition, something that'll continue on into Prime 3. And Prime 2's key hunt is not as good as Prime 1. And now with the Annihilator Beam and the Dark Visor, we can now get every key. Believe it or not, I accidentally found a sky key in Sanctuary Fortress before even knowing it was going to be a key hunt, because I kept on bumping into something invisible.
Woo. Oh, hi.
Echoes' key hunt, in my opinion, wasn't as good as Prime 1. Again, I'm in the unpopular opinion where I actually enjoy these key hunts. See, in Prime 1, you were actually able to find at least like 5 or 6 of the Chozo artifacts without needing all of the upgrades in the game. But in Prime 2, in order to get all of them, you need the Annihilator Beam. In fact, you only can get 2 of the sky keys without needing every upgrade in the game. Plus, finding them felt less like it was a puzzle or a scavenger hunt and felt more like, oh, it's just sitting here out in the open waiting for something to walk by. Some of them were actually kind of confusing to get as well, because even though I scanned some of the statues in the area to get some hints, they didn't really help as much. So I actually had to look up a guide for the last 3 I was missing. Wait, I forgot, there's one more upgrade that Samus can get, and that's the light suit. You see, already it looks infinitely better than the dark suit. And this makes us take 0 damage while in the dark world and allows us to stand inside the poisonous water. It also allows us to fast travel, but for the entire time I had it, I didn't know how to use it. The game only stated that I could and just didn't elaborate further on it. With all the 9 sky keys in hand, we now enter the Dark Sky Temple. Inside, we find the source of all the Ing Queen. And this is the last good boss fight of the game. Yes, I know there's one more boss fight, and I still stand by it. It has 3 phases, each having a unique way of dealing damage. The first one is pretty standard, just deal enough damage to it. The ball phase only took long because it was actually just me being stupid, so it actually doesn't get any points off for that. The last phase was just sort of annoying because its hitbox was just weird if you weren't using the light gun. When the Ing Queen dies, we have another staple of the Metroid series, an escape sequence. But right when you're about to leave back into the portal of the light world, Dark Samus is back, looking more deranged, and we have a final showdown. And like proper send-off with Prime 2, this boss fight sucks. Scanning her says that she is weak to Phazon, and that we have to collect the excess Phazon to shoot it back at her. But playing this for the first time, the game taught me the wrong lesson. You see here, those little specks? Yeah, that's the excess Phazon we have to absorb, but the game doesn't say that. And when I tried to absorb them, I took damage. I didn't see it at the time, but I actually took damage from stepping on the outside ring area. But my mind immediately went to thinking that these little specks hurt me. So for the entire fight, I was actually ignoring these little specks, trying to deal damage with the super missile. I still think if I didn't hit the outside wall, I still wouldn't know what exactly to do. And she just constantly did the same attack over and over and over again until finally time ran out and I got my first game over of the game. Sucking up the Phazon now makes the fight stupidly easy, and I beat her in like 2 minutes. Samus finally makes her escape to the light portal, and plays a fun little cutscene where it plays the same scanning sound effect. She reaches back home and is surrounded by the newly awakened Luminoth thanking her. She takes it in for a bit before leaving with a badass wave of the hand. And with that, Prime 2 is finished. I finished the game in around 13 hours with a 62% completion rate. Oh boy, that game took a lot longer than I thought it would. Prime 1 only took like 10.5 hours, and this added 2.5 hours onto it. But I'm glad that I beat it. I enjoyed the a lot more linear aspect to the worlds itself, at least when the game didn't tell me to leave the area and come back to it later. The idea of going through 2 different worlds, like the light and the dark world, was executed well, and they each had their own identities. Because of the split world aspect as well, the worlds itself were a lot smaller and easy to navigate. I thoroughly thought the ammo system was fine. I don't even think I ever ran out of ammo. I actually checked the footage and it never said 0. What I did hate about the game was just 90% of the boss fights being unfun, repetitive, and just completely unfair. The key hunt itself could have been done a lot better, but it was a lot quicker than the Chozo artifact hunt in Prime 1, so it's in its weird place right now. Now, you would think with the amount of complaining that I was doing about Prime 2 Echoes that I would have enjoyed it less than Prime 1. But the thing is, I thoroughly enjoyed playing Prime 2 a lot more than Prime 1. And I think it's due to sort of Prime 1 having a constant level of annoyance. Like, the annoyance level was always like this steady curve. There was never a point where I wasn't annoyed. While in Prime 2, my annoyance kind of spiked here and there, but a majority of the time, I was having fun going through the game. With that, my enjoyment score would be a 7 out of 10, and my thoughts of it as a game is 7.5 out of 10. Now we have one more game to get through, and it's gonna be a doozy. And I actually can't wait to talk about it, because I have many things to say about it. And with that, thank you all for watching.